Hello and welcome everyone. I am Waqas Khwaja, Professor of English at Agnes Scott College in the Department of English as it is. And I am organizing this event on behalf of the International Literature Festival Berlin for this poet, Ashraf Fayadh. As I sent out an email, and some of you might have read about this, that he's been condemned to death for apostasy, that is, turning away from the religion he was born into, which is Islam. And this has happened in Saudi Arabia. Whether those charges are accurate or not is quite another matter. In all probability, they're all trumped up charges, and I will give you a brief resume of Ashraf Fayadh's biography in a while. But the important thing is that Ashraf Fayadh is a poet and an artist, and has been very active on the scene in promoting Saudi artists, which is interesting. We never knew there were very many Saudi artists in the world. So promoting Saudi artists in Europe and in European capitals, and in particular in England. And he has often been seen as an ambassador for Saudi artists and for Saudi art, which I believe should have been seen as a good thing. But apparently he got into some kind of an altercation with a person in a cafe while watching a soccer match, and it blew totally out of proportion when he was reported for using bad language or abusive language against Saudi Arabia, against religion, and so on. And the upshot of all of this was that he was arrested, but then released a couple of days later. And however, within 3 or 4 days, he was arrested again. And this time, it was not just the person who had initially complained against him who came forward to level an allegation against him of using abusive language against Saudi Arabia and against possibly Islam and so on. But it was also the 2 police officers who had originally come to arrest him. And their testimony apparently was more emphatic about his being critical, extremely critical towards Saudi Arabia, and critical towards Islam, and then abusive towards God as well. So all kinds of charges were clubbed together here, and he was tried, and he was sentenced to 4 years in prison with 800 lashes. Pretty bad punishment in its own right, but it was appealed against, and during the time it was being decided whether this could be appealed against or not, he was in prison during all that period, and not treated in the best of possible way, obviously, you can imagine. Being under this kind of punishment, in fact, almost always in a Saudi prison would lead you into solitary confinement, but I have no sort of firm evidence about how he was kept in jail at that time. But it was a good 18 months before that appeal was heard, and the case was thrown out, the decision was thrown out as not being in accordance with the principles of justice and not being quite legal and so on. And a new court was constituted with a new prosecutor. Now, normally this would be good news, right? But not in his case. When this case was sent back to this new court and to this new prosecutor, he was not allowed a hearing at all. His lawyer was not given the opportunity to mount his defense. He was not given an opportunity to controvert the evidence that was produced against him. And all of this evidence on which he was convicted ultimately is hearsay. There is no concrete evidence on the basis of which he was convicted. And the charges now were not about criticism of the Saudi state or anything. The charges now were of apostasy and atheism. In this second or later development, as it was, where the new court was constituted, for the first time, the prosecutor brought a charge not against only what he said at the time of the altercation in the cafe, but also relating to a book of poems that he had published in 2008. And that book of poems is called Instructions Within. And it was charged that the poems in Instructions Within are atheistic, or they promote atheism. The charge, I think, that we might have heard in relation to another historical figure way back in history. Socrates was corrupting the minds of the young people. Some might know already of that whole story. But it was something similar that has happened here. It seems that they felt that he was corrupting the minds of the young people through this poetry, which they saw was atheistic. Some excerpts from that book is not available. Some excerpts from that book were available, which I have put together in a form, in a printed form, that we'll be reading out to you today, and perhaps we'll take turns. The participants will take turns in reading portions of it. So anyway, so atheism and then apostasy. The punishment, according to certain schools of Islamic jurisprudence for apostasy, is death. Once you become a Muslim, you're always a Muslim. You can't change your religion. Well, it's tough because I think people are encouraged to be hypocritical rather than honest. And I don't think any religion would want to promote that. And I don't think Islam promotes that, but that's the way certain jurists in Islam interpret this particular aspect of Islamic law, if you will. So in any case, he's been condemned to death, and he has gone into appeal against that. Nothing has come of that appeal. He is in solitary confinement now, and we have no idea what will happen next, whether he'll be summarily executed one day without anyone even hearing of it, or whether he'll actually have his appeal heard, and maybe some sense will come out of that. So this is a tricky situation. At this time, on this day, there are over 125 different events across the world in support of Ashraf Fayadh. And I thank you all for being here, because I think the show of support for Ashraf Fayadh and for what he stands for, or what he has been made to stand for, put it however you like, I think is an important part of living our lives also as people of conscience, as people who believe that there has to be certain space and freedom for everyone in life, and particularly for artists and writers who should not be suffocated and strangulated in terms of what they have to say. So I think this is an important occasion, and I think it is with deep gratitude that I see that all of you are here, and I thank you for being here in support of Ashraf Fayadh. I will briefly read this this sort of resume of who Ashraf Fayadh is, because although he sort of has lived all his life in Saudi Arabia, he's not born, he's not a Saudi citizen. So here, just some matter that I've gleaned from various accounts in newspapers, etc. According to a New York Times article, Ashraf Fayadh was born in Saudi Arabia to a Palestinian refugee family and is therefore a citizen of no country or stateless, relying for identification entirely on documents issued by the Egyptian government. So you see a whole lot of states, governments, loops are involved here. However, Saudi Arabia is the only home he has known, for he has lived most of his life in the southwestern Saudi city of Abha, where he was a prominent member of a small and burgeoning artistic community before his arrest for blasphemy in late 2013 after an argument with a local man in a cafe. Though released without being charged at the time, Fayadh was picked up again in January 2014 over the same allegation, now supported by two members of the Saudi religious police, the Mutaween, with an additional accusation of illicit relations with women the poet describes as fellow artists whose pictures were found on Instagram on his phone. For the first time, the blasphemy charge was extended from his alleged outburst in the cafe against God, Prophet Muhammad in Saudi Arabia, and hitched to his 2008 book of poems, Instructions Within, which Fayadh maintains is basically about him being a Palestinian refugee and about cultural and philosophical issues. He was found guilty on both counts by a court in Abha and sentenced to 4 years in prison and 800 lashes. That was overturned on appeal a year and a half later. The retrial with the new prosecutor and judge ended in another swift conviction. The New York Times reports that he was now found guilty on 5 counts, including the promotion of atheism, threatening the morals of Saudi society, I wonder what morals they have, and having illicit relations with women. I'm sorry, I couldn't help that. He is under death sentence for apostasy. In another article, The Guardian quotes a migrant rights activist from Kuwait, Mona Karim, who's also translated some of his poems we'll be reading today, as saying he was unable to assign a lawyer because his ID was confiscated when he was arrested in January 2014. Then they said he must have a retrial and we'll change the prosecutor and the judges. The new judge did not even talk to him. He just made the verdict. It is ironic and absurd, for before the accusations, Mr. Fayadh was seen as an unofficial ambassador of Saudi Arabia's contemporary art scene. He had curated exhibitions of Saudi art in Jeddah and at the Venice Biennale, and he is the founder-director of the British Saudi art organization Edge of Arabia, a collective of Saudi artists dedicated to the promotion of art in the Desert Kingdom and introducing it to Western audiences. So this is basically a brief biography of the person for whom we have organized this event. At this stage, I'm going to ask people who are already sure of participating in this event, with whom I've been communicating over email regarding this. Because all of you are not here, and I'm not sure just by looking how many of you are and how many of you are not. If you all step up here, to the front of the room. Assignment that you might want to read. Okay. And then what I want, we can read this one. If you will read the first part of this one till here, then you can move on to the next person. So each of you will read a portion of this one.
What are the numbered sections? Okay, yeah.
It's all marked in sections. So, our participants will read a couple of poems by Fayadh, and they will read them in rotation, so I'm just going to leave the floor to them. Thank you.
So just go there and then sit down afterwards? Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Asylum. From Ashraf Fayadh's Instructions Within. Translated by Sultan Saud al-Qasemi. Asylum, to stand at the end of a queue, to be given a morsel of bread, to stand, something your grandfather used to do without knowing the reason why. The morsel, you. The homeland. A card to put in your wallet. Money, papers that carry images of leaders. The photo, your substitution pending your return. And the return, a mythological creature from your grandmother's tales. End of the first lesson.
Frida Kahlo's mustache. I will ignore the smell of clay, the reproach of rain, and the choke that has long settled in my chest. And I will search for an appropriate condolence of my situation that doesn't permit me to explain your lips in the manner I'd hoped for, or to shake dewdrops of your reddish petals, or to lessen the intensity of the obsession that overwhelms me whatever I realize. You're not next to me now and won't be. I'm forced to justify my position to silence that night punishes me with. Pretend that the earth is silent, just as we see it from afar, and that all what happened between us was no more than a poor prank that shouldn't have gone this far.
What's your idea about the days I usually spend without you? About my words that used to rapidly evaporate? About my heavy pain and the knots that had sedimented inside my thorax like dried up algae? I forgot to tell you that in the practical sense of the word, I've grown used to your absence, and that my wishes have lost their way to your desires, and my memory has begun to corrode, and that I still chase light, not because I want to see. The dark always frightens, even when we're used to it.
Is my apology for everything that happened while I was trying to make up excuses for you enough? Is it enough for the times jealousy raged in some place inside me, or when disappointment ruined yet another of my dark days? And for my repetition that justice will always suffer the disturbances of menstruation, and that love is a backward, impotent man at the end of his days.
I will be forced to trick my memory and pretend that I have no problem sleeping, and rip all the remaining questions, the questions that now search for persuasive answers after all punctuation has been dropped for purely personal reasons.
Let the mirror explain to you how beautiful you are. Remove my pile of dust. My words breathe deeply. Remember how much I loved you and how the whole thing turned into a brief electrocution that almost caused a great fire in an empty warehouse.
The sun is extremely polite when it comes to covering her mouth while yawning. The sun doesn't know how to impose its total control over the earth. The same fate the sun has with darkness. The sun has no choice but to resist the dark, even if Pluto has lost its qualifications to remain among the vertiginous planets. The moon has a different take on imposing its will over the sea. And the sea can swallow whatever creatures it desires and lay claim to more land on account of global warming, the punctured ozone, a woman's right to wear a bikini, and the temptation of birds with the riches of fish.
I will no longer be paying pills for your monthly period and won't enjoy your exceptional conversation while you prepare for a long nap or when you want to offload your anger or while you spend some lovely time in a bar packed with lovers of jazz. I won't be able to sleep enough or explain Nietzsche's mustache or persuade you that Ahmad's work is a unique experiment in art. I will busy myself with normalizing relations between earth and water in order to obstruct fire on its way to becoming an ambassador of goodwill. Only then Will the air cease to appear presentable as it dries out your underwear on your laundry line? I walk in the street of the inexpressible and question the indifferent raindrops. I try to remove the rust that's stuck in my throat. How many times should I refer to the wind's guidebook to decipher your moods? How many words have I silenced to spare you the smell of disappointment that my American cigarette blows? I won't be the piggyback you break whenever you run out of funds, and I won't include as poetic chore in a Morris description of your eyes, because your eyes, in a final analysis, are more fatal than those that ruin Janir's mind, or more poetic than Sayeb's palm tree groves. Your eyes are precisely the way angels prostrated to Adam, and I exclude Satan, naturally, for rhetorical reasons.
This is the last part of the poem. The world this morning resembles my stomach with its ulcers, resembles the ache that spends its weekends in my head, resembles the heaps of broken glass that fill my memory. The world is no longer all right since I have stopped worrying about glass, or the reply letter to my letter to Mrs. Clinton's failure to leave the Democratic Party. Don't look for me. I will be there with every sip of coffee. And when you relax at a spa, or want to laugh or cry, or if you desire to toss yourself into someone's arms, or when you can't resist your insomnia or your mobile phone that didn't ring during your sleep, or when in the unconsciousness of writing, or when you want to talk, or while watching a movie, regardless of its quality, and when you tickle the ground as you walk, exercise, and when you hear your song, the one we have yet to agree on. So this is the poem called Frida Kahlo's Mustache that we were all reading from, and it is translated from Arabic by Fayadh Jouda, who is a pretty well-known translator and a poet in his own right. He is winner of the Young Yale Poets Award, I think it was about 7-8 years ago, and he does a lot of translation work from Arabic as well. The people who read the poems in their order of appearance: Mariana MacDonald, Letiana Nichols, Alan Crowe-Stephen, Paige Sullivan, Dan Beach, Ajay Vishwanathan, and Calvin Bergamy, and I'm missing one person here, excuse me, and Rupert Fick. Thank you very much. Okay. I am now going to be inviting these participants individually to come and read their own poems or their own contributions to this event. And the first person that I'm going to ask to come to the podium is Alan Crowe-Stephen. Alan Crowe-Stephen.
So I'm going to read, I think, just two poems, and these are not my own. They're poems written by young Colombian children who I taught writing to years ago, and I translated their poems for a book called Stories of Life and Death. And my feeling is that they're free to express themselves. Right? There's no repressive government limiting their free speech. They live in a shanty town. When I knew them, they were in middle school, 8th and 9th grade or younger. And many of them were destined to drop out, and just because of the poverty. And so I think that the great injustice of their poverty will keep them from writing, right? Will keep their voices from being heard, and that, the middle class or the wealthy will be able to write and publish. So I thought I'd give them space, and they're also very good. I was really amazed at some of the boldness of the poem we just read. And I think this is a poem by a 16-year-old young woman named Judy Zananda. And it also is quite bold. It's a bit surreal and makes some different moves here. So we'll see if you can hang with Frida Kahlo's mustache. I think you can hang with this too. It has no title. It rains. It rains funeral smells on the shaken wings of a bird which sings on top of a tree trunk, making the earth vibrate like a wild bird. The light on the path journeyed forth to return home with a slow song. No one listened to it when it fluttered its wings around the corner, tangling its wings among the alleyways and medicinal plants. They became distracted as looks in the mirrors, in an oasis of cricket songs more violent it could not be. The presence of night in a luminous and spectacular way made me feel good without distrust. And the suffering and the cold impartially, like wanting to cry. That afternoon, the aurora of the afternoon blazed fatefully in 5 spirits. Invert your suffering, whistle to death, and then you will touch it like your shadow. This is mine, undressed. And then you will smell how I have suffered, your funerals with melancholy before the cold oils of a dying moon. On indolent soil, the dogs will dig, howling, goodbye. So that's the first poem in the book. I put it there because it is so bold and so well written. And I'm going to read the final poem in the book, which, to give you briefly context for it, this is a poem by, to his name, a young writer I worked with, Manuel Andres, who was 12 years old, and it's titled Dialogue of Peace, and what he's referring to is the dialogue between the Colombian government and the guerrillas, the leftist Marxist guerrilla group, the FARC. And when I was in Colombia, this is in 2001, these peace dialogues ended, right? Everybody had very high hopes that there would be a resolution, a ceasefire, and that the 60-year-old war would end. And when it did, when the talks failed, it was a time of huge despair that this war would just go on forever and ever. And about 3 or 4 months ago, these peace talks have finally produced a ceasefire, and a peace accord should be signed in about, I think at this point, maybe 3 or 4 months. And so what seemed impossible is very likely going to happen right now in Colombia. The civil war will end. So this is a 12-year-old writing a poem about, I think, very much what he's observing on TV, what he's hearing on the radio, what he's hearing from adults, and what he thinks about the war. And he's also living in a community among people displaced by the Civil War. And so he knows very much about those scars and that trauma that everybody's bringing. It's very short. Dialogue of Peace. To the carnival of Escarrera, a woman looks for bread at the necessity of her daughter, who is sad with hunger. Since the guerrilla displaces men and women, and everyone begs and flies like pigeons. 100 years where everyone wants peace is like a line of empty chairs that reflect the history of Colombia. All the good things are gotten like a new music, like a thief trapped who says, "Let's talk," or a priest who says, "Brothers, pray to God." That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. It's not too late in the day, and I've had some black coffee, but it seems I am still a bit forgetful. Must be my age. I'm going to introduce Alan Gross-Stephen now. I should have introduced him before he came to the podium. So here, Alan Grossstephen is the editor and translator of Stories of Life and Death, a collection of writing from young Colombian writers, and the author of Bogota, a novel chosen by the Wall Street Journal as one of the best 10 books of fiction in 2013, and longlisted for the PEN/Robert W. Bingham Prize. He's at work on a new novel that won the Ellen Levine Fund Award in 2014. He teaches creative writing and English at, Agnes Scott College in Decatur, Georgia. And you know where that is, right? Okay, so the next person I'm going to call on for presenting a contribution is Paige Sullivan, and I'm going to introduce her. She too has a connection with Agnes Scott. She is currently an MFA candidate at Georgia State University, where she also serves as the poetry editor of North South. Her poems appear in Q, Terminus, American Literary Review, and other journals. And she is indeed an alumna of Agnes Scott College. I'm really proud of that.
Thank you. This is a beautiful space. It was built right after I graduated, so I'm very pleased to be here as an alum. I wanted to start with a quote. Poet C.D. Wright very, very recently passed away in Tin House. We posted a beautiful quote by her that I thought was appropriate for tonight. And she said, "If I wanted to understand a culture, my own for instance, and if I thought such an understanding were the basis for a lifelong inquiry, I would turn to poetry first. For it is my confirmed bias that the poets remain the most, quote, stunned by existence, the most determined to redeem the world in words." That seems really appropriate, so that was beautiful. I'm reading the current poet laureate's book right now, Juan Felipe Herrera, his book Notes on the Assemblage, and I wanted to share a poem from his book and then one or two others. So this is a poem called Ayutthanafa. He wrote it for a group of students who under very tragic circumstances, and I thought it was fitting in terms of poets being able to give voice to those who maybe don't have the ability to give voice to themselves. From Ayutthanafa, we were headed toward Iguala to say to the mayor that we wanted funds for our rural school for teachers. It was a protest for our school, that is all. Rural teachers, nothing more, nothing less. We were protesting for funds, that is all. We were surrounded by police and their cronies. They fired their guns, they burned us, they dismembered us in trash bags. They threw us into the river, yet we continue, yet we march from here, from the bowels of Mexico, this river that floods all the schools and all the universities and all the floors of the emperor's palaces. We continue at 24 years of age. We make way through the massacre here, from where we were born and from where we died, toward all the cities in the world, toward all the students and teachers of the world, demonstrating on all the streets, sprung open, incandescent. No one knew it, no one saw it. We are leaving this number, 43, for you, because there were 43 of us. We are not disposable. That was pretty powerful. We're lucky he's our laureate. Just two more. Seemed like an appropriate night to read a little Walt Whitman, so I'll read part one, A Song of Myself. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul, and lean and loaf at my ease, observing a sphere of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old, in perfect health again, hoping to cease not till death. Creeds and schools and abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard, nature without check, with original energy. Well, I sort of found this poem by accident. Today, I really like it, so I'll end with this one. It's called Justice Come Down by Minnie Bruce Pratt. A huge sound waits bound in the icicle roots, in the buds of snow on fir branches, in the falling silence of snow. glittering in the sun, brilliant as a swarm of gnats, nothing but hovering wings at midday. With the sun comes noise. Tongues of ice break free, fall, shatter, splinter, speak. If I could write the words. Simple, like turning a page to say, write what happened. But this means a return to the cold place where I am being punished. Alone to the stony circle where I am frozen, the empty space, children, mother, father gone, lover gone away. There, grief still sits and waits, grim, numb, keeping company with anger. I can smell my anger like sulfur-struck matches. I wanted what had happened to be a wall to burn, a window to smash. At my fist, the pieces would sparkle and fall, air would be changed. I would not be alone. Instead, I told my story over and over at parties on the edge of meetings, my life clenched in my fist, my eyes brittle as glass. Ashamed, people turned their faces away from the woman ranting, asking, "Justice, stretch out your hand, come down," glittering from where you had hidden yourself away.
Thank you very much, Paige. Very moving, very apropos. I'm going to ask Mariana McDonald now to come and share her work with us. Mariana McDonald's work has appeared in numerous publications, including poetry in Crab Orchard Review, Lunch Ticket, and Stone Sea Sky, an anthology of Georgia poems and fiction in So to Speak, Updo, and Cobalt, where she was a finalist for the Zora Neale Hurston Fiction Prize. She became a fellow of Georgia's Hambridge Arts Center in 2012. McDonald lives in Atlanta, where she's active in social justice movements and with the writing community. Thank you for sharing your work.
Thank you so much, so much. We're all here tonight because we find tyranny abhorrent. And we're here because we want to see justice for Ashraf Fayadh, and we want to save his life. 4 years and about 4 months ago, Georgia was the site of an obscene violation of justice. And so I thought that both to honor that person and to redouble our efforts to ensure that we win freedom for Ashraf, I wanted to read this poem, and of course, it's for Troy Davis. How long does it take to kill a man? In 14 minutes, he was gone. 14 minutes and 20 years. 20 years and 4 death warrants. 4 death warrants and a worldwide cry. How many voices does it take to stop the murder of one whose guilt is in doubt? When guilt is in doubt, what is murder then? Is murder when the ears go deaf and stubborn lust for blood prevails? Stubborn lust for blood prevails in Jackson and in courtrooms. In Jackson and in courtrooms, grief surrounds us while in disbelief we lose not one but two with this foul deed. In this foul deed we lose the man, a young black man, ragged noose around him, noose made needle for his death, which killed both him and the one who loved him. Justice. Some of you may know that Oscar Lopez Rivera is a Puerto Rican political prisoner who has been in U.S. prisons for 30, 40 years for the crime of seditious conspiracy, the same crime Mandela was charged with and Gandhi was charged with, which is a thought crime not dissimilar from what Ashraf is experiencing. Oscar writes a good 20 letters a day to his friends and supporters around the world. And one of the things that the prison officials do is muck with his mail. They delay it, disrupt it, and destroy it in the hope of, diminishing his spirits. This is a sonnet called On Tampering with a Political Prisoner's Mail for Oscar Lopez Rivera. What time machine so hurtles us about that my embrace today detained for weeks, to pitch a fleeting habitat for doubt that loves the witness that will finally speak? And why the calendar so cruelly rent, its days turned inside out and upside down? The laughter that a month ago was sent will not reverse decay into frown. The makers of the maze don't understand. No wide thug can shake us, make us dumb. This affection has no second hand, nor walks the narrow path of pendulum. Our compass is the star, the steadfast sun. Our certain course, no brute can make undone. So we're here together in solidarity with Ashraf and with many events, I think you said 120 around the world. And that, I think, shows the importance of us being united and working together. So I'm going to read a very old poem that is addressing when people don't do that, and it's called Sectarianism. In Argentina, death squads kill ultra, former and suspected leftists. Machine guns riddle Trotskyist brains, and Leninist leaders are hunted. Coke bottle bodies of militiamen rape and batter the bodies of non-aligned women. In North America, Chicano men are shot in the streets, quite ignorant of Mao, and non-discriminating wiretaps pry into the thoughts of thousands. I would be the first to say use science and experience together. Study, think, and criticize. Stand firm on your principles. But let me, friend, remind you when you leap to strike, that comrade's thought. Non-sectarian pools of blood stain the earth to teach us all a lesson we're compelled to learn. The enemy knows who the enemy is. And I'm going to end with a poem that I'm dedicating to Ashraf, because he is essentially a leader. And I believe he is experiencing what he's experiencing because of his leadership, because of his critical thinking, and because he's a Palestinian and an immigrant. So I dedicate this poem to him, called Leadership. And the epigraph is, let me say, at the risk of seeming ridiculous, that the true revolutionary is guided by great feelings of love. Who said that? Che Guevara. Come on, people, listen to this guy, you should know that. Anyway, leadership is not simply turning a wheel. Leadership is not pushing. Leadership is a spark for the solid keg of dynamite, a first ripple on a churning sea. Leadership is touching me so I can move, knowing both the speed and the pace of my walking ever so quicker so I don't stumble as we break into a run together. Leadership is not knowing all the answers set safe in your mind, but seeing them bear truth in the actions of our lives. Leadership is like the reason for it all. As Che would say, leadership is life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariana. You ask Dan Beach now to come and read his contributions to this event. He is the founder of and editor of Atlanta Review and author of Elephant Water, winner of the Georgia Author of the Year Award in Poetry, a translator of Chinese, Arabic, Spanish, and Anglo-Saxon. Dan has won the Willis Barnstone Translation Prize. It's the highest prize in translation you can get. He's editor and co-translator of Flowers of Flame, Unheard Voices of Iraq, published by Michigan State University in 2008, which won an Independent Publisher Book Award. Dan has performed his poetry worldwide, including Oxford University, People's University in Beijing, the American University in Cairo, and the Adelaide Festival in Australia, and dare I add, Agnes Scott College as well. He has been honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Georgia Writers Association. We're very proud to have Dan Beach here to support this event. Dan.
Thanks, Waqas. Tonight I'd like to read a poem from our Iran issue. And this is a very interesting issue for me as an editor because about halfway through the process, Sholeh Wolpe, the actual editor of the Iran feature, called and said exactly when is this issue going to come out, because one of our poets has to be out of the country before it does. And you're about to hear that poem, which was later republished by Michigan State University Press in a book called The Forbidden Poems from Iran. I was lucky enough to help translate this poem, and it was top secret while we were doing it. We could never mention the name of the author. We could never mention the name of the poem, so we just called it the poem, which actually we decided to turn into the title since it didn't have one. So it's a longer poem, so I'll do some excerpts for it from you. So this is the poem by Moshe Imadi. Words are the burying ground of things. The poem lit 3,000 candles. Oh, I need to say this before I start. What the poem is about a massacre. This is why it had to be so secret. No one in the West knew about this massacre of 3,000 members of the Baha'i religion in Iran. And specifically, it's about their burial place, Kabaran, which was later dug up, and no one knows what happened to the bodies. So he keeps mentioning 3,000 in this poem. That's for the 3,000 Baha'is. The poem lit 3,000 candles, built 3,000 paper boats, and offered them all to the sea. Now I have packed my bags and wait for the first train to take me out of here. The poem is riding a bicycle, trembling and in haste. It pedals through bumps and puddles. A year ago, the poem slipped through barbed wire, where soldiers patrolled the hills of your breasts, stole your lips, your hands. Bullets and warm blood find their way into the lines. No paper can stop the bleeding. The station is full of passengers who are dead. The firing squads and the hanging ropes are not waiting for any train. Mumbling gravediggers ring the doorbells of 3,000 homes. 3,000 abandoned bicycles litter the alleys. The poem is not standing in front of a firing squad, nor does the firing squad know where on the poem to aim at. They simply hike the prices of utilities, the rent and burial expenses. I cannot buy cigarettes for 3,000 dead, but I can bring them all back to life. I don't want to make the poem send them back to a cemetery that doesn't exist anymore. I only want to remind it that all the abandoned bicycles have decayed by now, that no one will ever again hear the jingle of their bells. At the border stations, they arrest our tongues. Our words decay when they cross that line. I let go of your hands outside the station. The train's whistle hurries my words. Words have filled up all the cabins. They dream 1,000-year nightmares. I'm not standing in this long line for bread and milk. I stand here to surrender my tongue. Everything crossing the border becomes lighter. I stand to be translated. In the rain, the distance between us widens, and in that distance, Kavaran grows larger. In my language, every time we suddenly fall silent, a policeman is born. In my language, on the back of each frightened bicycle sit 3,000 dead words. In my language, people murmur confessions, dress in black whispers, are buried in silence. My language is silence. Who will translate my silence? How am I to cross this border? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. And now I'm going to call upon a young and very gifted poet, Tatiana Nichols, to come and share her poems with us. She was born and raised from South Miami. She was born and raised in South Miami, Florida, after attending college preparatory school in the Appalachian Mountains of Georgia. She found Agnes Scott to be her second home in the fall of 2012. She's a current senior majoring in English creative writing with a minor in women's studies, and she'll be graduating this year, May 2016. She anticipates her first memoir, Conversations with the Inhumane, to be completed later this fall, an intense, unconventional and morbid collection of memories, poems, and letters that describes her life as a patient with mental illness. She's a writer, a poet, an academic, but above all, a true activist. Tatiana Nichols.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to present to you two poems that I wrote a couple weeks ago. I was so honored to be here and be a part of this ritual, this tradition. The first poem I'm going to read to you all is entitled Lineage. That expresses my questioning about where I come from. And most of my family members usually keep our ancestry silent and our religion silent, even though we are Christians. So I'll read that to you first. Lineage. I asked my Nana if anyone in our family were descendants of slaves. She swallowed hard and told me sternly that none of us lived through slavery. God blessed our family to live in the North. Her light brown freckled skin aged gracefully, her Bostonian accent thickening as it seeped through her teeth. She grabbed and pinched my nose and added a kiss to my forehead. Thank heavens we are free. Long ago, she felt eager to show me her birth certificate, crumbled and faded, the word colored, dark and bold, placed near the bottom next to her name, Florine Elizabeth Lithcott. The ED at the end left in solitude. I wondered if she was lying. How could she have known our full lineage? Our black, brown, yellow, pale skins melting in the heat, thorn, stinging, cotton-picking fingers, my great-great-great-grandmother's spine crackling, trying to stand erect, frequent lashes due to her mistakes, dropping chicken eggs that was supposed to be for Mass's breakfast. I could hear her shouting at me, saying, "Close your eyes, and you could see my nightmares." It was her honor to build where I am standing. It was her honor to take the whip, her honor to accept the inexplicable doom that terrorized her fate. I keep wondering whether her skin were light enough, or perhaps pretty enough, like my Nana's. Did she ever feel the cool breeze of being a house slave? Okay, so my next poem is called 3 Days. It's about African American women in the jail system. Hope you enjoy. She used to think freedom was easy and smooth. She could grab it with her bare hands and kiss it. She thought it felt good, and she laughed at all her comforts until she was arrested and spent 3 days in jail. Her fingerprints glued to the black ink, her soul now latched and sealed to the system. She begged God to free her body from the man-made hell. Doors clanking open every 2 hours, guards spitting seeds on the cold tile floors, inmates whispering prayers, their disheveled looks from the wear and tear of horror and hunger. They warned her not to drink the water, but she couldn't help it. She was thirsty, and the broken sink pipe in her cell sprayed a grayish liquid that brimmed to the edge of the sink. She sat curled in her bed, choking on clouds of insanity. Soon they called her name. "Inmate, let's go." Freedom was just behind those sealed doors. She saw and heard freedom, but then looked back at her cellmate and mouthed, "I left you my toilet paper."
Thank you very much, Tatiana. We're going to pause a little bit here at this point, and I'm going to see, since I have all of you here for the time being, if we can have a moment of reflection. So just a moment of silence for about 30 seconds, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the program. Let's think about this, reflect on the fate that Ashraf Fayadh is facing, reflect on why we are here, and whether this is an isolated incident in the world, whether there are many other people who may be suffering a similar fate, or facing a similar fate. Let us give our thoughts to them. Let us do that for about 30 seconds. It's all right. Thank you. What I would like to do now, if you would indulge me a little bit, is to pass out these poems or sections of poems by Fayadh to people in the audience. And if it is all right with you, each one of you may want to read a portion from that poem. And so we will have more participation. So. If you start with section 1, we can probably start from you, and then you move on from here. Please go ahead if you would read it. You want to read there? Okay, that's fine too. No, you could do it there if you want to, if you feel that you need the mic.
Let me try. Number 1, petroleum is harmless, except for the trace of poverty it leaves behind. On that day, when the faces of those who discover another oil will go dark, when life is blown into your heart to extract more oil of your soul for public use, that is the promise of oil, a true promise, the end.
2, it was said, settle there, that some of you are enemies for all, so leave it now. Look up to yourselves from the bottom of the river. Those of you on top should provide some pity for those underneath. The displaced is helpless, like blood that no one wants to buy in the oil market.
3, pardon me, forgive me for not being able to pump more tears for you, for not mumbling your name in nostalgia. I directed my face at the warmth of your arms. I got no love but you alone, and in the first of your seekers.
Number 4, night, you are inexperienced with time, lacking raindrops that could wash away all the remains of your past and liberate you of what you had called piety of that heart, capable of love, of play, and of intersecting with your obscene withdrawal from that flabby religion, from that fake tanzil, from gods that had lost their pride.
Thank you. 5.
5. You burp more than you used to, as the bars bless their visitors with recitations and seductive dancers. Accompanied with the DJ, you recite your hallucinations and speak your praise for these bodies swinging to the verses of exile.
6. He's got no right to walk however, or to swing however, or to cry however. He's got no right to open the window of his soul, to renew his hair, his waist, and his tears. You too tend to forget that you are a piece of bread.
7.
On the day of banishment, they stand naked, while you swim in the rusty pipes of sewage, barefoot. This could be healthy for the feet, but not for earth.
prophets have retired. So do not wait for yours to come to you. And for you, the monitors bring their daily reports and get their high salaries. How important money is for a life of dignity.
A friend fellow stands naked every day without banishment, without divine creation. I've already been resuscitated without a godly dwelt in my image. I am the experienced hell on earth. Earth is the hell prepared for refugees.
Tim, your youth blood will not speak up as long as you pride yourself in death. As long as you keep announcing secretly that you have put your soul at the hands of those who do not know much. Losing your soul will cost time, much longer than what it takes to calm your eyes that have cried tears of oil.
Can we begin again with one here? You have, and Latia, do you have? No. Anyone else who has this piece with them? Could you start again with number 1? Please go ahead, Lauren.
Petroleum is harmless, except for the trace of poverty it leaves behind. On that day, when the faces of those who discover another oil well go dark, or when life is blown into your heart to extract more oil off your soul for public use, that is the promise of oil, a true promise, the end.
It was sad to settle there, but some of you are enemies for all, so leave it now. Look up to yourselves from the bottom of the river. Those of you on top should provide some pity for those underneath. The displaced is helpless, like blood that no one wants to buy in the oil market. Pardon me, forgive me, for not being able to pump more tears for you, for not mumbling your name in nostalgia. I directed my face at the warmth of your arms. I got no love but you alone, and I'm the first of your seekers.
Night, you are inexperienced with time, lacking raindrops that could wash away all the remains of your past and liberate you of what you had called piety, of that heart capable of love, play, and of intersecting with your obscene withdrawal from that flabby religion, from that fake Tanzil, from gods that had lost their fire.
Far more than limit to as God's grace they are victims with lyric recitations and seductive dances. Accompanied with DJ, you recite your pronunciation and speak your praise for those bodies swinging to the verses of exile.
Please go ahead.
He's got no right to walk, however, or to swing, however, or to cry, however. He's got no right to open the windows of his soul, to renew his air, his waste, and his tears. You too tend to forget that you are a piece of bread.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, every one of you, for reading out really appreciate this. I'm going to call on Ajay Vishwanathan now to come and read his contribution. Ajay Vishwanathan is the founder and chief editor of Foundling Review. His work has been published or is forthcoming in close to 100 literary journals, including the Minnesota Review, Southwester, Southern Humanities Review, Smokelong Quarterly, the Baltimore Review, and so on. One of his stories was picked by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Robert Olin Butler as one of the finalists for Best Short Fiction 2015. Ajay's short story collection, From from a Tilted Tale was published by Queen's Ferry Press in 2014. He's currently wrapping up this novel. Ajay, please.
Good evening, everybody. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm here for Waqas, I'm here for Ashraf, and I'm here basically for freedom. And the poems, 2 poems that I'm going to read have been published before, and they are basically for freedom from oppression. And the first one, to give you a one-sentence background, is in many parts of the world, a girl is not welcome. And this poem is titled The Cry of a Boy. 3 years. It hasn't rained this side of the world in 3 years. Standing near the grillless, glassless window of the village hospital, his mind is a battlefield of thoughts, of contradiction. He waits for the cry of his newborn, oblivious to the pounding rain, leaves stumbling across the dirt road, to the high winds screaming past the trees that hiss and rattle, irascible like untamed stallions. 3 years. Parched fields haven't bathed in 3 years. White cats huddle under a bench, hiding from dripping roofs, from clattering shutters. He thinks of father. Clenched fist, brows curl like an angry cobra. How he howled. A girl is not welcome. He thinks of love in the household, clinging with tired hands, clinging to faith. The household moribund after 3 straight girls. 3 years. With no rains, nothing to harvest in 3 years. After hearing his wife cry for a week, maybe more, for a month, 2, till she found belief again in her budding womb. Will come trampling the shadows of anguish, a son who will erase the blemish of his sisters, letting his mother smile again. No more a cursed womb that bears no boy. He clutches hope hard in the soaked hallway, still waiting. The rains will finally bring food to plates after 3 years. This is again freedom from oppression. As you know, in Saudi Arabia, it's not very easy for women to drive. In fact, I think it's not allowed. And this poem is called The Wind in Your Hair. You look to steal the car key from father's briefcase, which is open, easily accessible, reminding you not of his trust, but his conviction that you will break no rules, that you have no nerve to defy him or his ways. The key arouses an unfamiliar feeling in you, one that thrills you and stays with you as you drop the key in the pocket of your jeans and walk towards the door, past walls of framed pictures where you stand next to your sister and mother in a bazaar, where you lean against a mud wall with your neighborhood friends. You know which one in those pictures is you because you recognize your eyes behind that burqa. Outside, you look down at the prints on your white t-shirt, where those heaps of rounded iron gray clouds look like an explosion. You hear father yelling at someone in the other room, at your younger sister perhaps. for listening again to sinful teenage music, for becoming another victim of Western influence. You are now in your 20s, but memories are fresh of those pelts from father's walking stick that fell on your palms. Those that bit when your quiet tears touched them. You see your little brother waving at you from the car, sitting in the passenger seat wielding his video camera. He will also break the rules with you, but will receive only a harsh glare, while the lashes from father's belt will envelop you like a charcoal garment. Your brother winks at you as you open the car door and get in, his smile widening into a chuckle as you turn on the ignition. With the windows down and no scarf to cover your ears, you don't hear his chuckle, just the engine whirring, sounding like a just-woken creature. The sight of your hand, a woman's hand around the steering wheel, looks strange, yet refreshing to you. A quick reverse, and then a sharp right turn leads you to the street outside, that leads you to another, and finally to the main road, where traffic is so slow, eyes fall on you, glares like shrapnel. You will soon have to stop, blocked by flashing lights and silence. The engine will sputter and die while you are asked to get out of your vehicle. You pull down the window, but stay inside the car, ignoring the pointing and the grumbling and the honking and the red light blinking on your brother's camera that is capturing your naked face, the unconcealed t-shirt, the gleam in your eyes, and the wind in your hair.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Very moving poems. Let's move on, and I'm going to ask Calvin Bergamy to come and share his contributions. Calvin Bergamy has an MFA in studio art, photography and video from Georgia State University. He is instructional technologist at Agnes Scott College. Without him, the ITS wouldn't function, I can tell you that. At least for me, it wouldn't. He's an artist with a specific interest in digital video and photography. He has 2 gallery shows on the horizon at Agnes Scott College, the Showing Thinking exhibit in the Dalton Gallery, and a 1-person photography video exhibit, No Exit Now, at the Rankin Gallery in Columbus, Georgia. Calvin Bergamy.
I'm going to read a poem by Walt Whitman, too. And this is a poem I think about hope. It's called The Great City. The place where a great city stands is not the place of stretched wharves, docks, manufacturers, deposits of produce merely, nor the place of ceaseless salutes of newcomers or the anchor lifters of the departing, nor the place of the tallest and costliest buildings or shops selling goods from the rest of the earth, nor the place of the best libraries and schools, nor the place where money is plenteous, nor the place of the most numerous population. Where the city stands with the brawniest breed of orators and bards, where the city stands that is beloved by these, and loves them in return and understands them, where thrift is in its place and prudence is in its place, where the men and women think lightly of the laws, where the slave ceases and the master of slaves ceases, where the populace rise at once against the never-ending audacity of elected persons, where fierce men and women pour forth as the sea of the whistle of death pours its sweeping and unripped waves, where outside authority enters always after the precedence of inside authority, where the citizen is always the head and ideal, and the president, mayor, governor, and whatnot are agents for pay, where children are taught to be laws to themselves and to depend on themselves, where equanimity is illustrated in affairs, where speculations on the soul are encouraged, where women walk in public processions in the streets the same as men, where they enter the public assembly and take places the same as men, where the city of the faithfulest friends stands, where the city of the cleanliness of the sexes stands, where the city of the healthiest father stands, where the city of the best-bodied mother stands. There the great city stands. And now I'm going to read a poem for Jennifer Lund. She said she couldn't be here tonight, and I was in her office, and she said, take this to the reading. So those of you know Jennifer, she's going to Bolivia, and this is a poem by Eduardo Galeano from Uruguay. It's called The Nobodies. Fleas dream of buying themselves a dog, and nobodies dream of escaping poverty. That one magical day, good luck will suddenly rain down on them, will rain down in buckets. But good luck doesn't always even fall in a fine drizzle, no matter how hard the nobodies summon it, even if their left hand is tickling, or if they begin the new day with their right foot, or start the new year with a change of brooms. The nobodies, nobody's children, owners of nothing. The nobodies, the no ones, the nobodied, running like rabbits, dying through life, screwed every which way, who don't speak languages but dialects, who don't have religions but superstitions, who don't create art but handicrafts, who don't have culture but folklore, who are not human beings but human resources, who do not have names but numbers, who do not appear in the history of the world but in the police blotter of the local paper. The nobodies who are not worth the bullet that kills them.
Thank you, Calvin, and thank you for both of those poems, vicariously to Jennifer Lund as well, for that wonderful selection, The Nobodies, and your own poem, of course, about the city that we all dream of. I'm going to ask now Rupert Fig to come and present his poems. Close near to the end of our program, so Rupert Fig, let me introduce you first.
Oh, you don't have to read all that.
His collection of poems, Lotus Parfait, Brick Road Poetry Press, was named finalist in the Georgia Author of the Year Awards 2011. In 2015, he received honorable mention in the annual Ron Rash Fiction Award, and his poem was chosen for inclusion in Poetica's yearly awards issue of writing on the contemporary Jewish experience. He has Pushcart Prize nominations in fiction and poetry, with work appearing in the Southern Review of Poetry, ANU America's AIDS magazine, the Buddhist Poetry Review, and he has a poem inscribed in a downtown Atlanta plaza. Please welcome him.
I see here one of the readings is in Nigeria. That's what I want to talk about. Does everybody know who Ken Saro-Wiwa is? He's a writer. He was one of the best writers to come out of Africa the last century. And I'm just going to read the first paragraph from this book, Soza Boy, which has been described as the pinnacle of African literature. But Ken Saro-Wiwa's plight tragically mirrors Ashraf Fayadh's. He was an activist for the Ogoni people, which was his people. The Niger River Delta comes down, it's full of oil, and the environmental waste that the Royal Dutch Shell Company was doing to Nigeria, to his people's land, And the Nigerian government, the military government, Abachi general, they kept telling him not to do that, to stop. He would not stop. He organized a demonstration of over 300,000 peaceful Ogoni, and they took him to jail, much as they took Fayadh to jail. And then he got out, much as Fayadh got out. And then they arrested him again on a trumped up charge. This was all in the mid-1992, 1993. And on November 10th of 1995, he was hanged. And his voice was stilled forever. And this is why we're all here. This is why there's 125 readings going on right now. It's all because we feel powerless, right? But here, maybe by all of these readings, here in Agnes Scott, or there's one in Nigeria, as I pointed out, that maybe this can make at least some kind of difference. But I just want, so whatever happens to Fayadh, we're going to remember him. We're going to pray for him. We're going to hope for his health and his continuedness. But it didn't work out for Ken Saro-Wiwa. So I want his words to go out. That's the way we can remember him. His words will always be here. This book is called Soza Boy, which is, he created this whole book in a Pidgin English. He called it broken English. It was the language of the boy soldiers. This is when boy soldiers was just getting started. The young kids that would just put a rifle in their hands, and it was the Biafra War. He listened to them, and he created this book that is in complete dialect, over 200 pages. It's unbelievable. Ken Saro-Wiwa, number 1. He didn't even say chapters, he said lumber. That's the way they spoke. Number 1. Although everybody in Dukana was happy at first, all the 9 villages were dancing and we were eating plenty maize with pear and knacking Tory under the moon. Because the work on the farm had finished and the yams were growing well. And because the old bad government have dead and the new government of Soza and police have come. Everybody was saying that everything would be good in Dukana because of new government. They were saying that Kotuma Ashbottom from Bori cannot take bribe from people in Dukana again. They were saying, too, that all those policemen who used to chop big bribe from people who get cased will not chop again. Everybody was happy because from that time, even magistrate in the court at Bori will begin to give better judgment, and traffic police will do his work well. Even one woman was talking that the sun will shine proper, and people will not die again because there will be medicine in the hospital and the doctor will not charge money for operation. Yes, everybody in Dukana was happy and they were all singing.
Thank you, Rupert. That was really very moving. And thank you for sharing with us. I'm now going to ask Franklin Abbott to come and share his work with us. Okay. Oh, I'd like to introduce, I keep forgetting this. Franklin Abbott is a radical pro-feminist activist and poet. He has published 2 books of poetry, Mortal Love and Pink Zinnia, and he is the founder member of the Atlanta Queer Literary Festival. He has also published 3 pro-feminist anthologies on the subject of men and gender: New Men, New Minds, Breaking Male Tradition, Boyhood, Growing Up Male, and Men and Intimacy, Personal Accounts of the Dilemmas of Modern Males. Franklin Abbott.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this, Waqas. This is really important, and when I say that it's a privilege to be here, it literally is. It literally is a privilege, to be able to stand up in public and read what I'm going to read. And I'm not going to be afraid this evening that because I have offended someone or I have questioned some authority, that my physical safety is in jeopardy. And so that's part of how I know that I'm privileged, is that, you know, I can get away with this. When I read some of the poetry that you sent out, I thought how it reminded me of some of my poet friends, how it reminded me of some of Rupert's work and some of Dan Beach's work, and I thought, you know, I cannot imagine that either of them would be detained, either of them would be, you know, under a death penalty for having expressed themselves. So this, you know, it's really beyond my imagining that this can happen, because I am so privileged and I am so protected, and yet, you know, it's events like this that make us aware that these things happen in the world, that there's much work for us to do, much work for all of us to do. I'm going to read two poems from my last collection, Pink Zinnia. They're both called What We Know and What We Don't Know, Part 1 and Part 2. We know their names, though they were only known by their initials M.A. and A.M. when brought to Edelat Square. We know on July 19, 2005, in Mashhad, the Iranian city of martyrs, M.A. and A.M., as they were known, aged 17 and 18, were hung in public in Edelat Square, hung by the neck until dead, on orders of Court Number 19, two teenagers, Mahmoud Asghari and Ayaz Marhoni, were executed for the crime of homosexuality. We know they were 15 and 16 when arrested. We know they were beaten with 228 lashes. We know they admitted to gay sex but claimed in their defense most young boys have sex with each other, that they did not know it was a crime punishable by death. We know that they said what they said after the lashes rent their flesh 228 times. We do not know what kind of teenagers they were before their demonization and the aftermath of their executions. We know the official spin of the Iranian government turned them into rapists and thieves. We know they were from an ethnic minority, Arabs among Persians. If it had happened in America, they would have been black, have Spanish surnames, or both. We know their families were poor. We don't know if they were there to see the boys legally lynched in Edelat Square in the city of martyrs, or if they collected their bodies and buried them. We don't know where they are buried, or if their graves are marked or ever visited. We know that the method of hanging used in Iran is the short drop, which results in strangulation as the person's weight cinches the noose, and after 1 to 3 minutes of struggle and pain, death occurs. We know that the decision of Court Number 19 was upheld by the Supreme Court of Iran. We know the Iranian government refused to allow any public protest. We know of another dozen minors who were executed that year in Iran in violation of international law. We know one of them was Atife Rajabi, 16, a mentally ill girl from a poor family who in her crazy way would taunt the mullahs in the street, call them hypocrites. We know she was hung for acts incompatible with chastity, sex outside of marriage, in other words. We know more than 4,000 gay men and lesbians have been executed in Iran since the fundamentalist Ayatollah seized power in 1979. We know there are 4 prescribed death styles decreed for the crime of homosexuality: being hung by the neck, being stoned by a mob, being halved by a sword, or dropped from the highest perch. We know on July 19, 2005, Mahmoud Asghari and Ayaz Marhoni, aged 17 and 18, were hung in the public square for the crime of homosexuality. We know the terror continues year after year. We don't know if it will ever end. What we know and what we don't know, part 2. We know as he slipped away, his assailant was next door. We know the color of the couch where he lay, deep red. We know the assailant was his father, who was next door in Bible study with friends from Deeper Life Ministries. We know he died 6 days later with swellings on both sides of his head from microscopic brain tears and subsurface bruises between his skull and scalp, from where his father would slapbox the 3-year-old boy until he cried so he wouldn't be a sissy. We know the boy before he went into a coma on the deep red couch, his father next door in Bible study with Deeper Life Ministries. We know the boy grew lethargic, had stopped eating, began wetting himself. We know his mother, who testified against his father, had not called the police for fear the boy would be taken from her again. We know the father, a former city sewer worker, who came to court in a borrowed suit with a public defender, was only 21 years old himself. We know he did not flinch when the jury of 6 men and 6 women returned after 3 hours of deliberation and pronounced Ronnie Parrish Jr. guilty of second-degree manslaughter and aggravated child abuse for the death of his 3-year-old son, Ronnie Antonio Parrish. We know the boy had been in foster care after he had been admitted to the hospital several times for vomiting. We know he had been home only 6 weeks when he went into a coma and died 6 days later. We know his mother, Nashera Parrish, told the court her husband was jealous of the baby and complained of too little sex. He told her not to hug the baby. It might make him gay. We know after the verdict, the boy's grandfather, Ronald Parrish Sr., was finishing a bag of Cheetos when he told reporters how he had raised his son. Football, fishing, wrestling matches, boxing, all that. He blamed the mother, said her mind was not right. His own mother, Leslie Hooks, agreed. She said her grandson ain't never did nothing bad. She blamed it all on the devil. What we know won't help the boy. What we don't know is what will stop the beatings. We don't know how the 30 years in prison will change Ronnie Parrish Jr., now 22 years old and incarcerated. We don't know if the devil had a role or simply refrained from intervening. Maybe like Sheldon Bostic of the Deeper Life Ministries, who told Ronnie Jr. not to be quite so rough on the boy. Maybe like his sister, Shanita Powell, explained it, he was teaching him how to fight. Maybe that's all the devil had to do, step back and let the others do next to nothing until a 3-year-old boy was dead and his 21-year-old father was damned for life.
Thank you very much, Franklin. Thank you for sharing that poem, those 2 parts. We're nearing the end, as it is. We'll conclude this event with a rereading of part of the poem, Frida Kahlo's Mustache, and we'll ask Kamala and Franklin Abbott to come and read that. But before that, I want to share a poem of mine with you as well. It's perhaps less of a poem and more of thoughts that I put down on paper for the occasion. It's called I'm Afraid of Muslims. I'm afraid of Muslims. Christians unnerve and alarm me. Jews fill me with dread. I fear Hindus. I am terrified of Gautama's followers. Scared of Nanak's devotees. Science and arts, secularism and socialism, capitalism, communism, commerce, civilization, rattle and dismay me. A red flame flares up in my brain the moment I see a human figure, and I flee in terror to deserts, forests, and hills, to rivers, lakes, and seas, to haunts of birds and beasts, the domains of fish and eels, of sharks, dolphins, and whales, to worlds of insects and worms, and of all burrowing creatures, to realms of reptiles, serpents, and snakes. Contiguous worlds, without rituals of aversion, without philosophy, religion, law, without affliction of private visions, where no species inflicts its language on another, no species its call, its order, its practice, where life itself is art, living science, contiguous worlds of simple sorrows, simple joys, without raptures and ecstasies, without gnawing of the vitals in envy and spite, where pain does not devolve to depths of despair, nor killing bloom into genocide or holocaust. Contiguous worlds, now turned into garbage bins, into litter pits, into radioactive disposal dumps in collective indifference. Contiguous worlds to which malign effluents leach and spread irredeemably, where the plant of infections and defilement pitches its roots deep into the earth's core. Contiguous worlds, invaded and annexed, ruptured and torn and robbed. Look, look, I cry, the stockpiles they have assembled, the toxic malice of their words and deeds, the malevolence of their contempt, the impunity of their depredations, the freedom of their slaughter, oblivious to what is seeded, oblivious to what they foment, unmindful of ruin and havoc, blind to the obliteration they have prepared for themselves. But the plains smile and shake their heads. Deserts lie on their backs and snigger. Mountains, caverns, and rocks drink with laughter, and waters of the earth dissolve in wild guffaws. Okay. Franklin Abbott is Kamala Dutt. I will briefly introduce her. Is a very well-known performer, activist, and poet. Please, Kamala. You can go through top points.
Waqas, thank you so much for organizing this event. I've just returned from India, and this poem by Ashraf Fayadh, Farida Khal's mustache, reminds me of an Urdu ghazal or a Sufi lament, and I'll read it like that. First page. Is it better?
Yes.
I'll read the first page. Farida Khal's mustache. I'll ignore the smell of clay, the reproach of rain, and the choke that has long settled in my chest. I'll ignore the smell of clay, the reproach of rain, and the choke that has long settled in my chest, and I'll search for an appropriate condolence of my situation that does not permit me to explain your lips in a manner I would hope for. I'll ignore the smell of clay, the reproach of rain, the choke, and long settled in my chest, and I'll search for an appropriate condolence of my situation that does not permit me to explain your lips in a manner I'd hoped for, or to shake dewdrops of your reddish petals, or to lessen the intensity of obsession that overwhelms me whenever I realize you are not next to me now and won't be. I'm forced to justify my position to the silence that night punishes me with. Pretend that the earth is silent just as we see it from afar, and that all what happened between us was no more than a poor prank that shouldn't have gone this far. What is your idea about the days I usually spend without you, about my words that used to rapidly evaporate, about my heavy pain and the knots that had sedimented inside my thorax like dried up algae? I forgot to tell you that in the practical sense of word, I've grown used to your absence, and that my wishes have lost their way to your desires, and my memory has begun to corrode, and that I still chase light, and that I still chase light not because I want to see. The dark always frightens, even when we are used to it. Is my apology for everything that happened while I was trying to make up excuses for you enough? Is it enough for the time jealousy raged in some place inside me? And when disappointment ruined yet another of my dark days? And for my reputation that justice will always suffer the disturbances of menstruation, and that love is a backward, important man at the end of his days.
I will be forced to trick my memory and pretend that I have no problem sleeping and rip all the remaining questions, the questions that now search for persuasive answers after all punctuation has been dropped for purely personal reasons. Let the mirror explain to you how beautiful you are. Remove my pile of dust, my words, breathe deeply, remember how much I loved you and how the whole thing turned into a brief electrocution that almost caused a great fire in an empty warehouse. The sun is extremely polite when it comes to covering her mouth while yawning. The sun doesn't know how to impose its total control over the earth. The same faith the sun has with the darkness, the sun has no choice but to resist the dark, even if Pluto has lost its qualifications to remain among the vertiginous planets. The moon has a different take on imposing its will over the sea, and the sea can swallow whatever creatures it desires and lay claim to more land on account of global warming, the punctured ozone, a woman's right to wear a bikini, and the temptation of birds with the riches of fish. I will no longer be pain pills for your monthly period and won't enjoy your exceptional conversation while you prepare for a long nap, or when you want to offload your anger, or while you spend some lovely time in a bar packed with lovers of jazz. I won't be able to sleep enough to explain Nietzsche's mustache or persuade you that Imad's work is a unique experiment in art. I will busy myself with normalizing relations between earth and water to obstruct fire on its way to becoming an ambassador of goodwill. Only then will the air cease to appear presentable as it dries out your underwear on the laundry line. I walk in the streets of the inexpressible and question the indifferent raindrops. I try to remove the rust that's stuck in my throat. How many times should I refer to the wind's guidebook to decipher your moods? How many words have I silenced to spare you the small disappointment that my American cigarette blows? I won't be the piggy bank you break whenever you run out of funds, and I won't include as poetic chore an amorous description of your eyes, because your eyes, in the final analysis, are more fatal than those that ruin Jarir's mind, or more poetic than Sayab's palm tree grows. Your eyes are precisely the way angels prostrated to Adam, and I exclude Satan naturally for rhetorical reasons. The world this morning resembles my stomach with its ulcers, resembles the ache that spends its weekends in my head, resembles the heap of broken glass that fill my memory. The world is no longer all right since I've stopped worrying about glass, or the reply to my letter, or Mrs. Clinton's failure to lead the Democratic Party. Don't look for me. I will be there with every sip of coffee. And when you relax at a spa or want to cry, or if you desire to toss yourself into someone's arms, or when you can't resist your insomnia or your mobile phone that didn't ring during your sleep, or when in the unconsciousness of writing, or when you want to talk, or while watching a movie regardless of its quality, and when you tickle the ground as you walk, exercise, and when you hear our song, the one we have yet to agree on.
Well, let me end by thanking all of you very much for being here, for supporting this event, and for supporting Ashraf Fayadh. I hope that we also have a sense of the precious moments and, in a sense, rights and freedoms that we enjoy in our lives. And perhaps we can learn to value them a little bit better, knowing how much under threat they are elsewhere in the world. Perhaps we can go out and do something good in this world to perhaps pass on these values in a way that is acceptable to those parts of the world where they are so threatened. So thank you very much once again. I really appreciate it.